This year, I figured I would do something different and react to my driver's predictions from earlier this year. 2024 had a ton of driver swaps, and so I figured this would be a good opportunity to see what I had thought at the start of the year and compare that to what actually happened, as well as be able to give you all of my thoughts about all the new driver pairings in one place. Yeah, let's watch my driver predictions and see how terrible they were.
Okay, guys, hear me out. What if Lewis Hamilton goes to Ferrari?
Yeah, the Lewis to Ferrari move was shocking. I'm kind of disappointed that I didn't do these predictions before that happened, but I don't think anyone could have predicted that, so it just would have made my predictions worse.
Obviously, to start off my predictions, we're talking about Ferrari, and it is incredibly clear who will be driving here because we have had both contracts announced within the past week, and that is Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton.
In terms of my thoughts on it, it's pretty clear to me that like Charles is the best qualifier on the grid right now. What he's able to do in that car at times is incredibly impressive. And so I think he's going to have the upper hand on Lewis at the start, especially because he's going to be used to the car, used to the team, and Lewis is going to be taking some time to get acclimated. And I think we saw in 2024 that his qualifying really struggled. And so it'll be very interesting to see if that is Lewis or if that was the car that he was driving. So if the Ferrari is actually a better car and Lewis is able to tame it right away, this could be different. But I do think that Charles is going to have the upper hand, and so we'll see. I think the race pace is going to be a very interesting question because we saw how much better at race pace Lewis was than George. So we'll see if it's a similar thing with Charles. But yeah, I think easily the best driver lineup on the grid now. They seem to be pretty buddy-buddy, the two of them, so I'm curious to see how long that will last.
The fact that Lewis is joining Ferrari means there is a space opening up at Mercedes.
Yes.
They have a fantastic young driver by the name of Kimi Antonelli coming up the development ranks. If he wins in that first season, I think they're going to want an additional year for him
You let this boy
to
down.
be a reserve driver. Although, with the F2 cars being much more similar to F1 drivers now, I don't know if there's going to be as big of a gap between the two anymore.
I wonder if the F1 teams still seem to think that because there's so many promotions this year.
But I don't fully see Mercedes taking that risk.
They did. I was thinking it. I should have gone with my gut.
If Mercedes' goal is to put Kimi in that seat eventually, I think they're going to want something a little bit shorter term. I think that it could be Daniel Ricciardo.
Opium.
My other thought was, what if they really want to do a short-term thing and sign a driver to like a 1-year deal? And so possibility for this would be to go back to Valtteri Bottas.
And they did sign him for a third driver.
So, considering all of those people, my head just kept going back to one man. And that man is Fernando Alonso. I just know that this is going to happen because anytime there is any kind of drama in F1, Fernando's involved. This coming year, I have a feeling that the Aston Martin isn't going to be as good as it was in 2023.
Yep. So I wonder if he's regretting it. But then I think Adrian Newey signed, and that's probably what changed his mind.
If that happens, I think Fernando once again is going to be looking for other options, and he is not one to ever think of the burnt bridges behind him whenever he makes a team change.
I think he's kind of run out on that, though. I think too many people have been burned, and so they don't trust him anymore. Because I don't think Mercedes really even reached out to him.
Probably has about the time frame that Mercedes will be looking for so that he can drive there and then prepare it for Kimi Antonelli to come in a few years later.
That would be a situation that Fernando would hate, I think.
And then obviously the other seat in Mercedes is George Russell. I don't think he has any reason to leave currently.
Well, actually, George should be watching his back because I think I think Toto's really hunting for Max, and I think he would keep Kimi over George. Unless Kimi doesn't do as well as we all hope he will. Yeah, so Kimi ended up taking the other Mercedes seat, which I'm kind of of two minds about. I think I'm happy that they are promoting their young drivers, and it's clear that I think the general opinion of the F1 teams has changed to going with young drivers, because I think we've seen how much a lot of the older drivers have been struggling with this new generation of cars. Like Daniel's really struggled with it, Valtteri has, even Lewis has. So I think they're like, if we bring in a young driver who's adaptable and who has never driven anything else before, they'll be able to handle these new cars. Whereas the old guys, I think they've been a little bit more stuck in their ways, and so it's kind of harder for them to adjust to certain regulations. So yeah, that's kind of my thought on why the a lot of the teams went with younger people this year. Kimi might be a little too young. I'm really worried that they're promoting him too quickly and that he's not emotionally ready for all the pressure that being at Mercedes will bring. And just like getting used to just the absolute pressure cooker that is F1 might be challenging for him. He seems to have a good head on his shoulders though, and he definitely impressed in a few races in F2, so we'll see how this goes. And they clearly had the testing data, so they probably know he's quick. So it's just a matter of them kind of protecting him in his first year. And hopefully Kimi doesn't crash like he did in his first FP1 session. So yeah, I'm curious to see how this will go. I'm hoping that it goes well. Kimi's just such a talent, and it'll be great to have an Italian on the grid again. I'm already like looking forward to the Mercedes PR team just like fully leaning into Antonelli's just like extreme distaste for people hating Italian things. It's so funny. Like he's like so like particular about his pasta types and like what goes on pizza and how certain things are made, and it's so funny. He's like such a quintessential Italian man, and like, oh my god, it's gonna be so good. And him and George are just it's gonna be such an interesting duo. Like I'm very curious to see how this will go.
With Fernando signing with Mercedes, that opens a seat up at Aston Martin. And this was another one that I was kind of like, what could happen here? Obviously, Lance Stroll is going to stick around at Aston Martin. I've seen some people think that he's going to leave and join Aston Martin's endurance racing team, but I don't know. I think people are just pleading and hoping for that to happen, but I just don't think it ever will. As long as Lance still wants to do F1, I think Lance will still have that seat, and I haven't really seen
so infuriating
any hints that he is unhappy with his job.
I think this year we saw a lot of hints of that.
So I kind of thought about Carlos Sainz a little bit, but I think there's just a much more obvious choice for Carlos. My other thought was Felipe Drugovich, but as the years go on, the more I feel like he's going to be a Nick DeVries.
Yeah, I think those rumors about Jess Hawkins being quicker than Drugovich kind of ended his chances at a seat.
Could be Yuki Tsunoda based on his Honda connections. So I'm left with a couple people who are quite familiar with the Aston Martin team. And that is Nico Hülkenberg and Sergio Perez. And I just think that Sergio makes the most sense here.
Yeah, Aston Martin, I mean, like Lance Stroll is just a given, and it's so annoying that it's a given because he was terrible this year. Like in past years, like there was at least usually like one or two races where he all of a sudden randomly decided to care and then did a really good job, but I don't recall a single race this year that he was like that. So I think I'm just over it. And yeah, I think Fernando stuck around because he saw the Adrian Newey signing coming, and so I think anyone would jump at a chance to drive an Adrian Newey car. In terms of Checo, like in my season predictions, I had him getting dropped midway through the season. And if that had happened, maybe another team would have decided to pick him up, especially if he wasn't like performing too bad. But I think just like how terrible the entire season went for him, I think it might have ruined his chances as getting a seat. Not even next year, but in future years. And especially just the fact that he just seemed in the media to be so delusional with it too. Like he was just convinced that he still was going to have that seat, and like anytime he fielded that question, he was like, I have a contract, and just never really seemed to self-reflect on how terrible the season was going and put any blame on himself for it. So I mean, I guess that's kind of the front you have to put up. But yeah, Aston Martin ended up being only one of two teams that didn't change their lineup for 2025. So yeah, will be interesting to see what influence Adrian Newey has in his first year there, but I'm expecting a very good car for 2026.
Taking his seat at Red Bull next to, obviously, Max Verstappen, I have Daniel Ricciardo. The other thoughts I had for the Red Bull seat were Liam Lawson, but I think Red Bull have learned their lesson about putting rookies in there too quickly.
Maybe they haven't.
And my other thought was maybe Carlos Sainz would go there, but apparently Max and Carlos really butted heads back when they both drove for Toro Rosso. I don't know if I see that happening. And I don't think they want to deal with both Jos Verstappen and Carlos Sainz Sr. Throughout all of this, I really don't think Yuki has a chance to get that seat. Even if Yuki does really well in 2024, I just think Red Bull have fully come to the conclusion that Yuki doesn't have the temperament to handle the stress at that seat. I think they're happy for him to stick around AlphaTauri and help develop that car, but I don't think they really think of Yuki as a driver that can take Checo's place.
Oh man, it's just so funny to me because for the past 5 years, Red Bull have been chasing a driver to replace Daniel Ricciardo, and even Daniel Ricciardo cannot replace Daniel Ricciardo. Like, I just don't understand why they didn't even give it a shot. The whole Belgium thing where they told him that he was going to get the seat, and then they had a meeting with Checo, and Checo was like, I have all this money, and then I'm going to stick around, allegedly. And then Checo was just awful the rest of the season. Probably because he felt that he wasn't going to get the drive for 2025, so why should he even bother being good? Yeah, it was just ridiculous. Like, once they made that decision, they should have just followed through on it. And like, if Daniel wasn't very good in the car, you gave him half a season. You gave him a shot. He could go out feeling much better about leaving F1. Red Bull could go out feeling like they treated one of their most popular drivers well, and instead they just fucked the complete thing up by dropping him at Singapore. And the last few days, Daniel's deleted a ton of photos from Red Bull from his Instagram feed, and so it just seems like whatever happened there just completely soured that relationship, and it's made it so that Daniel just like is not going to return to F1 again, because I think he's just emotionally spent from being tugged around like a chew toy. Yeah, so this also gives you an opportunity to talk about the driver signings from this week. We have Liam Lawson going to Red Bull over Yuki, which I'm so disappointed for Yuki because I think Yuki deserved a shot. He's done so well. Well, not all 4 years, but he's definitely shown a lot of improvement over the last 4 years, and he's beaten every single driver he's been up against. He ended Nick de Vries' career. He basically ended Daniel Ricciardo's career, and he beat Liam Lawson 6-0 in qualifying. Like, what else can you ask from this guy? And I'm kind of 3 minds about it. One of the big reasons that Red Bull didn't put Yuki in there is that Yuki is a Honda driver and not necessarily a Red Bull driver. And since Honda is leaving Red Bull for Aston Martin, they were like maybe feeling a bit snubbed by Honda leaving, and like the kind of back and forth that they went through with them over the past few years about whether they were actually their engine supplier or not. And so I think they kind of politically didn't want to promote Yuki for that reason. They'd also probably be worried that Yuki might leave for Aston Martin as soon as that spot opened up after Fernando retired, and they wouldn't want to kind of train Yuki for a different team in that respect. Red Bull might also be thinking there's a possibility that Max leaves us in 2026, either for a different race series or to go to Mercedes randomly, if Mercedes is going to be really good. And so maybe they want to protect Yuki from having to go up against Max so that they have a driver that they can put in there that they're feeling good about once Max leaves. And they would rather risk Liam being emotionally destroyed by Max than risk Yuki. And then my third thought is that Helmut Marko was racist, and that's why he didn't promote Yuki. Like, being blunt, that's like probably one of the reasons that Yuki didn't get the seat. That's the impression it gives off. And so I'm just stating my read of the situation here. So I think a lot of people have used the fact that Yuki was not promoted as a chance to really lay in on Liam. I don't really blame Liam for this. If you're given the Red Bull seat, you're gonna jump at the opportunity. I'm having a tough time thinking that this isn't gonna go the way of a Pierre Gasly, though. Liam seems to have a bit of a temper to him, and he definitely butted heads with Fernando and Colapinto and Sergio over the course of his 6 races, and I don't see how that's going to go well, especially since what they want is a second driver to Max who's just going to put up with it and be able to support Max and qualify well enough and finish the races high enough that they're able to have a fight for the constructors, instead of like this past season where Checo was just so far out of it that he just wasn't to help at all, and they cost them the constructors essentially. But like I said before, like Red Bull have been looking for a driver like Daniel Ricciardo who's consistently like 1 to 2 tenths behind Max and can support him and also finish high, take points off other teams, but not compete with Max. And you're just never going to find that again, because Liam's going to obviously want to be fighting as hard as he can because he wants a world championship. It's going to put a lot of pressure on him, and I just don't know if he's ready for that. So I don't know what Red Bull are thinking. I think they were looking at Liam's potential and not reality. And I don't know if this is going to go well. I really don't.
With Daniel moving up to the main Red Bull team, there is now a spot open at the team formerly known as AlphaTauri, and it's going to be Liam Lawson taking Daniel's seat there to partner up Yuki.
Yeah, so since Liam went to the big team, it ended up being Isaac Hadjar who is taking that second RB spot. I guess they're officially called Racing Bulls now, I think, for 2025, which glad that they are picking a name. Hadjar, I think, deserves it. Like, he put in a good fight for the F2 championship. My biggest concern with him, well, actually, there's 2 concerns I have with him. One is that I think this has been the second time that he's had a massive lead at the end of a championship and then let it fall in a way and ended up losing out. I think that happened in his F3 championship fight. I think back in the year Victor Mertens won it, I think he had led it at some point and then let that slip away. And then he had a huge lead in the F2 championship and let that slip away. So I'm kind of worried that his mental toughness isn't quite there. So if he gets put under any kind of pressure, I don't know if he's going to be able to keep it together. I also think that Helmut Marko was always on Yuki about how aggressive and like sweary Yuki's radios are. They got another thing coming with Isaac Hadjar's radio. The guy is very angry on the radio, would be my take, and he kind of tends to yell at the engineers, which I don't think is a very good way to go about it. So I'm sure that one of their first things they're going to be doing is trying to iron that out of Hadjar. I'm worried for Hadjar, and if Hadjar doesn't do well, I don't know who the hell Red Bull could put in that seat. So I think Hadjar's probably going to get the full season, only because Red Bull doesn't really have any other replacements. I mean, they could maybe go with an Iwasa, but I'm not so sure how this is going to go. But at least we'll maybe have some more chaos on the grid next year. And yeah, I've already stated my thoughts on Yuki. He should have gotten the Red Bull seat.
The other consequence of Lewis signing at Ferrari, and that is Carlos Sainz leaving.
Oh man, Carlos. He was the plug in the tub for a lot of the year.
And while I think this is probably a year earlier than he would have wanted to do this move, I think he will sign with Sauber or stake. The other potential options I see at Sauber are Nico Hülkenberg, because he is German, and I think that Audi are probably wanting to put someone German in there if they can. But ultimately, I stuck with Carlos, and then in his partner's seat, I put Theo Pourchaire. He's moving over to Super Formula.
Oh, wow. Remember when that was a thing? And then he went to Arrow McLaren, and then Arrow McLaren screwed him over along with 4 other drivers.
Theo has shown that he can be a consistent driver, and definitely became less aggressive over the course of that F2 season that he won. So I think they'll finally be ready to put him into that second seat there.
Oh man, I was so far off with Sauber. The interesting thing with Carlos is it seems like his number one priority isn't necessarily the speed of the car, but the team around the car and how it's managed. Because I think if he has faith in that, then he knows that he can get the other things kind of lined up, like the technical and the strategy and all that. I think Carlos has a very good grasp on those kinds of things, and with his experience at Ferrari, I think he would be very good at kind of guiding that in a way that would work. I think he probably took one look at the higher ups at Sauber and were like, these people are not going to be able to bring this team into a good place. And then we saw, I think a couple months after this, that they had a couple people in there that were just butting heads constantly, and they both ended up getting fired. Carlos probably saw whatever drama was happening there. It was like, I don't want to touch that with a 50-foot pole. And also just how terrible the stake team was at the start of the year last year. And so I think Carlos made a good decision to not sign here. What ended up happening instead was Nico signed, which I think I should have just done that, because there was heavy rumors that Nico wanted to sign there for 2024, but Haas had the option with him to sign him for another year, and I don't think Nico had the option to exit the contract, so he was kind of forced to stay at Haas for another year. But now I'm almost wondering, is he regretting even leaving Haas, because Haas is so much better than Sauber. But I think the opportunity to drive for Audi in 2026 is probably what put Nico in that seat. And yeah, Theo Pourchaire, I think he's going to become another one of the F2 drivers to not ever get a seat, which is interesting, because at one time he was like very heavily touted, but maybe it was just the fact that he took 3 seasons to win it, and that's kind of something that teams don't really respect, because it's kind of the same thing that happened with Drugovich. And then, yeah, Theo just got thrown around between different categories, and for whatever reason, people didn't think they could work with him. So I don't know if it's maybe how he is outside of the car that is kind of put people off him. But yeah, just something there just hasn't gone right. And I think I don't know if he's still part of the Sauber development team or not, but yeah, just not happening. And so instead, Sauber went with Gabriel Bortoleto, which I'm very excited that we have a Brazilian on the grid again. It's been so long since, I think Felipe Massa was the last one. And yeah, and Bortoleto's proved to be such a good talent, because he's won F2 and F3 and F2 in back-to-back seasons. And yeah, I think at the start of the F2 season, it took him a little bit to get his footing, but once he did, he was so consistent, and I think that's what won him the championship. Because Hadjar fell off, Aaron fell off, and yeah, and then the premise were just terrible randomly. So yeah, good on him to do that well, and I'm excited to see how he'll do. I think also he might be in the best position as a rookie coming in, because I don't think there's any pressure on him, because we know that state car isn't going to be super great. And so if he's able to do anything with it, then that's going to be super impressive. And if he's not, it's just going to be put down to the car being bad. But I think having Nico as an experienced teammate, I think that'll be really good for him. So very curious to see how that'll go.
Valtteri, I think, is going to decide to retire.
Not quite. He's going back to Mercedes.
Joe, on the other hand, he might go to Haas. Just don't think that Joe's shown enough in his 2 and soon to be 3 seasons of F1 for them to sign him. My other thoughts again were Valtteri Bottas and maybe even Esteban Ocon. But for me, for Haas, I think it's become very clear that Ollie Behrman is going to be one of the drivers there.
Yeah, 100%. They were so impressed by him. in his FP1 sessions in 2023, and so it was pretty clear that this was going to happen.
Haas has decided to put him in 5 practice sessions in 2024.
I don't think it ended up being 5, but it ended up being 3 races. Well, at least not 3, but 2 races. So I think he almost probably did get that many FPs with actually driving full weekends.
I just came to the decision that Nico Hülkenberg was going to stick around at Haas.
Yeah, I guess Behrman, I think, is also the other rookie that I feel the most confident that he's going to do well. I think he's shown that in his races that he has done in F1, and Haas seemed to be super happy with him, and so I feel like that's going to be a great partnership. And then, yeah, the other seat went to Esteban Ocon, which I think I was kind of thinking was going to be a possibility. Like, if Esteban was going to leave Alpine, I think Haas was kind of the most obvious destination for him. And Haas always like to pick up the drivers that are kind of a bit unhinged and bad teammates in a sense. So yeah, I love that they're keeping that trend alive. So yeah, I think that'll be a really good partnership too, but we'll see how that impacts Ollie, or if Esteban will actually be a good teammate for once and kind of help Ollie out.
So sadly, that means that Kevin Magnussen will be out of F1 again. I mentioned Esteban Ocon being a potential driver for Haas and him ultimately not signing there, but I think Esteban will be looking around because I think he will be dropped by Alpine.
I saw this so clearly. Like, that relationship was coming to an end. I could see it. Especially with him and Pierre battling, I think they were going to always take Pierre's side.
He's kind of the reason that they lost both Fernando and Oscar Piastri.
Yep. They should not have signed him to that contract, because he was probably the worst driver of the 3. And yeah, just screwed them. Poor management of drivers.
I think they've probably been fed up with Esteban's shtick, and so I think they're going to drop him. I think Pierre will stick around there.
I actually think this is a really smart idea with Pierre, especially with like the new team that's kind of come in. I'm starting to get a little bit more faith in Alpine, and I think he's kind of in a spot now where he's the number 1 driver there, and I think that's going to be something he's going to want to hold on to. Even if the team is always chaotic around him, I think if he can try and do his best with it, I think that's a good spot for him.
So I have Jack Doohan joining the team for 2025.
I actually got this one right.
There's a slight chance it could be Victor Martins as well. Jack is a little bit less hot-headed. And I think he has had a lot more development
and
time.
Victor was awful in F2 last year. I can't believe how bad that season went for him. And he was so bad that I think Alpine went with Paul Aaron as their development driver and not Victor Martins. It was shocking. Like, the number of DNFs he had, crashes, it was unbelievable. Like, I don't even know how many races he even finished. It was crazy how bad he was. I'm glad that Doohan's finally getting a shot. He's the first Alpine Academy driver to actually get a shot in Alpine, which is pretty wild. And yeah, I'm a little bit worried for Doohan though, just because I don't really know how much of a talent he is. I think he was in the fight for 3 F2 championships. I think the 3rd year, I don't know, whatever team he was driving for, like, they just really struggled the first half of the year, but then he was able to, I think he did some sort of tire test and was able to figure something out, and then he was really, really good in the second half of his F2 or 3rd F2 season. And he's clearly done a lot of the development work for them the past couple years, and so I think Alpine are kind of giving this to reward him, but there are rumors out there that Doohan has a very short leash, and if he doesn't impress, they're probably going to replace him with Colapinto. I love Doohan. I think he's such a great guy, such a great personality, and I'm just a little bit worried that he's not going to last very long. Hopefully he proves Alpine wrong and is able to do very well, but he was pretty anonymous in his first race in Abu Dhabi, and so we'll see how that goes. But
next up I have Williams, and I think Alex Albon is going to stay here. Yeah. With James Vowles coming in that team, I think the trajectory of Williams is starting to gain momentum.
Yep. Even though this year was a step back,
I think that if he sees the thing through, it could go quite well for him going into the new regs.
And I think that's why Carlos signed there.
And in the car next to him, I struggled with this one as well, but I think they would jump all over the opportunity to sign an exciting young driver. And so I think they will put Kimi Antonelli in that seat. Logan could potentially get signed there again, but I just haven't
No.
seen enough from
No.
Logan.
So yeah, so Carlos ended up taking that Williams seat. And like I said earlier, I think he sees the same thing that I see with James Vowles and how much he has kind of amalgamated that team and got them going in a good direction. And I think that's also why Alex decided to stick around. So I don't know how good they'll be in 2025. Hopefully they won't crash as much and then they won't have to deal with crash damage. But yeah, I think they're trying to turn things around for 2026, and every single team that Carlos signs for always gets better from where they start to where they finish when Carlos leaves. So I'm very curious to see if they're going to have kind of a McLaren trajectory and be able to bring the team back to its former glory. Yeah, I think Williams is a team that you just can't help but root for, even though they're no longer the family-owned team. But last year was definitely rough, especially at the start of the year with their treatment of Logan. But I think they are consistently in my top 3 favorite teams. And so I'm really hoping this goes well, and we'll finally get to see how good Alex is, or if Carlos absolutely obliterates him, then I could be worried for him going into 2026. But yeah, I think I have faith that this is going to be a pretty good driver pairing, and both of them are fantastic personalities, and so I think it's going to be a lot of fun watching their I think they call it Team Torque, their little podcast that they do every week, and so I'm excited to see both of them kind of going at it in those.
Silly old McLaren being very boring, keeping a very good young driver pairing in Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. I will maybe do a reaction to this prediction video at the end of the year.
I already saw it being a crazy year for driver swaps. So yeah, overall, I did not do a very good job. In the order of like things I'm most interested in next year, I honestly think the Williams driver pairing I'm actually more interested in, and then the Ferrari driver pairing, but then the third thing is the number of rookies that are coming in and kind of who's going to succeed and who's going to fail out of that bunch. Because I think there are several drivers kind of waiting at the wings in case any of them don't do very well. I think Valtteri probably has a shot at coming back in. Franco Colapinto is probably going to get whatever rookie is dropped first. He's probably going to get their seat. And then Checo Perez as well. If a team decides that they want some of his experience in Red Bull, they might jump it, try to sign him again. But I don't know. I think that would be a bad move. So that was my reaction to my predictions of the driver lineup, but also my thoughts on how the driver lineups ended up. So let me know if you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the new year when I will make my predictions for the 2026 driver lineups. Toodles.